Silence as Yoga by Swami Paramananda. So, this is also a book published by Ramakrishna Mission, and this is what we are going to start here. As you can see, this is the publication is of Sri Ramakrishna Mysore, Ramakrishna Mutt, Malapur, Chennai. As you can see, this email is also given in this, and this book costs only rupees 15. So we are going to start today's episode. Silence as Yoga. The first chapter is the creative power of silence. So we're going to start that chapter today. In the Gita it is said, I am the silence of secrets. I am the wisdom of the wise. Buddha also says, his thought is quiet. Quiet are his word and deed. When he has obtained freedom by true knowledge, when he has thus become a quiet man. A seed in the womb of the Mother Earth lies in silence, absorbing nourishment and other natural blessings until its expanded soul bursts forth into bosom. Now it blossoms, then only this will happen. The spirit of the genius, nurtured in the bosom of quiet contemplation, awaits patiently its appointed hour of awakening. Silence, the great unseen power, the miracle of life, works upon our character with strange contrast. At times, it overwhelms us with its oppressive stillness, and again, it falls upon our heart as a shower of refreshing raindrops on a summery day. How often silence acts as a tonic, invigorating and reviving our dull spirits. Then, at other times, its effects upon us is like that of a narcotic, putting our life's energies into a state of morbid sleep. All great forces of nature work in contrast. In the world of religion and philosophy, the practice of silence plays a most vital part. It creates an atmosphere and enables the seeker to find access to an inner sanctuary entirely hidden from the restless and turbulent material world. Whenever we are listening to fine music, if someone speaks or makes a noise, we are distracted and jarred by it. And often we lose the subtle beauty of the music. Similarly, in spiritual study, if our attention is diverted, we receive little or no benefits. That is the reason why the idea of complete silence before spiritual study is strongly advocated by many of the great schools of thoughts. We can easily see its technical reason, how it aids us in the act of concentration, but its more profound significance is in the unfoldment of our higher nature. Even today, we find that many places of worship maintain rigid silence in order to create an atmosphere so needful for spiritual development and devotion and prayer. We can never hear the language of the soul if our ears are filled with loud noise of the world. One of the Sufi mystics expresses the importance of this beauty. He beautifully says, be silent, that the Lord who gave thee language may speak. For as he fashioned a door and lock, he has also made a key. I am silent, speak thou, O soul of soul of soul. All the mystic teachers and illumined sages particularly say that this atmosphere is needed. They also emit a particular atmosphere of calm and quiet dignity. In India, some of the great seers completely refrain from speech, and yet they exert a most potent influence upon the lives of their followers. One of the first forms of spiritual discipline the neophytes have to undergo is the practice of silence. They never speak before their teacher unless they are asked to do so. What is the most direct blessing they receive through it? It makes their mind receptive, and whatever it receives, it can easily assimilate. The necessity of this is felt even in our secular education. Unless the mind is receptive, any amount of time expanded in studies is of very little avail. It is interesting to note how Madame Montessori, in her system of education, advocates this idea of silence. Its value was felt in India from the time immemorial and was widely practiced from child education to advanced Vedic revelation. This mode of living and thinking, however, is quite out of fashion with our modern life and habits. There are some who even feel a strong aversion to it, and this is because they confuse the idea of silence with dullness and inaction. The aim of silence is not to free our mind from thought and assume a state of emptiness and passivity. On the contrary, silence becomes a definite factor for our efficient and concentrated thought. Silence means coordination of our body, our mind, and all other faculties to such an extent that every particle moves in one rhythm. In this state, all our aspiration and ideas work in harmony, so much so that there is no friction. You can verify this in connection with machinery. That which avoids friction most makes the least noise and ensures and endures the longest. In the world of life and all forms of activity, we find this to be true. The life that moves without inharmony and friction is the most efficient life. A man whose mind is well ordered and whose whole system is well organized is always finding something of interest within himself. He does not offer his opinion to others because he has found something within. He has become quiet, and through his balance of mind and attitude, he is always discovering an inner interest. That is what the Indo-Aryans recognized as the most essential factor in all forms of study. No one can study successfully unless he has the power of concentration and coordination. And this power cannot be achieved unless we come to an attitude of silence. A silent being is a very restful being. Even in a household, we find that the person who is calm, composed, and thoughtful radiates a powerful influence. Nervously disorganized people find a great source of rest through him. One of the most interesting phenomena that takes place in connection with the practice of silence is that the mind evolves creative genius. For instance, when a person who is used to intense activity and outer diversion for his pastime and pleasure is thrown suddenly on his own inner resources, if he is not thawed by it, his mind will have a peculiar reaction and he will discover his inherent reserves and originality. This also is true in connection with children's education. If we do not try to keep their minds altogether occupied with artificial toys and noisy games, they will work and invent newer ones. And this quickening of inner faculties is the gist of true education. We think better when our mind is not weighed down by matter. We see more clearly when our eyes are focused on a single objective, and nothing is more efficacious towards this end than the practice of silence. All wise people realize that the deeper part of our nature can only be expressed effectively when our outer being is still. That is why so often they retire from the crowd. They are not keen to offer their opinions. They think deeply and act quietly. We frequently misunderstand people of this type who are not constantly active like ourselves. We imagine that their lives are wasteful because they are not forever engaged in outer occupation. But we can never measure the good that radiates from a calm and contemplative spirit. Phillips Brooks expresses this beautifully. Certainly, in our own little sphere, it is not the most active people to whom we owe the most. Amongst the common people whom we know, it is not necessarily those who are busiest, not those who, meteor like, are ever on the rush after some visible charge and work. It is the lives like the stars which simply pour down on us the calm light of their bright and faithful being, up to which we look and out of which we gather the deepest calm and courage. It seems to me that there is reassurance here for many of us who seem to have no chance of active usefulness. We can do nothing for our fellow men, but still it is good to know that we can be something for them. To know, and this we may know surely, that no man or woman of the humblest sort can really be strong, gentle, pure, and good without the world being better for it, without somebody being helped and comforted by the very existence of that goodness. We must have certain fundamental virtues before we can make any headway with our spiritual life. If our mind is filled with noble thoughts, we do not find ourselves lonely and unprotected at any time. The average person is lonely whenever there is no one to entertain him or talk with him. But a person who has entered into his spiritual depth, even in a small measure, is very glad to find an opportunity when he can be alone, communing with his inner self. We should all learn to be alone with ourselves. People imagine that they cannot be happy unless they are constantly in company of others. Then again, some think that they must get away from everything and everybody in order to have peace of mind. However, we are never alone, even though we may enter a mountain cave if we are tormented by our own ignorance and selfishness. You may wonder what I mean by silence. If it is not getting away from the crowd, if it is not breaking away from the noisy part of life, it does not mean that. It requires something more than rushing away from people. You may enter the forest's untraveled depths, and yet you may find no quiet if your own mind is noisy, if your own attitude is distracted, of if you have not harmony within your own self. These are the things which we have to cultivate, and it is better for us to cultivate them before we fall into the entanglement of life. We cannot go into this world and expect to find everything just the way we should like it. There are disappointments and unexpected happenings, but in spite of all these upheavals, we can carry ourselves safely and with poise if we have acquired the silent attitude of the mind and habit. You may believe intellectually that it is a wrong thing to be angry. It is a wrong thing to be impatient. It is a wrong thing to speak harshly. But the words come unexpectedly, and before you realize it, you have spoken unkindly. We can order our mind in such rhythm and connect our life with higher force to such an extent that these calamities will never befall us. The great secret of success is that we work with our whole being, and we cannot do this without being absolutely still and concentrated. These are the simple facts of life, but not so easy to accomplish. We cannot expect somebody else to do it for us. There are many people who would like to have others think for them. Even the greatest mind cannot think for another. We are never going to gain our heart's satisfaction or our highest wisdom in that way. Another mind and another brain cannot think out our problems because it does not know the entire situation. We cannot give a true picture to anyone, no matter how we may try. There is, however, a way of finding our own solution, and that is by learning to enter within our own depths. It is not work so much that wears us out. Sometimes lack of work may do it. It is not knowing how to direct ourselves. It is not knowing how to find that attitude of collectedness and poise. When we are equipped with these qualities, we always have greater power of penetration. Intellectually, we may grasp the value of all this, but that is only the ethical aspect of it. It is the most dynamic, most practical, and most valuable thing in life when we apply it, and only when we apply it in our own lives do we find it fructification. A person who is nervous ceases to be nervous. A person who is physically weak and disorganized gradually becomes calm. A person who is dull, without any power of magnetism or attraction, suddenly blossoms and has a certain amount of light. Now, this comes from within, and for that reason, it has a far reaching effect. There are many people who can talk and preach and make a noise, but nothing superficial can bring us satisfaction. It is by living quietly and earnestly that we evolve the true spiritual insight which enables us to find our intrinsic values. Great ideas and ideals are always before us. Everybody hears them. But when a genius or a genuine soul hears an idea, he takes it. He says, I must know more about it. He thinks, reflects, and meditates. He goes into his very inmost depth and then he brings it to fruition. However, this does not come to a man who is in haste and wants everything at once. That is one of our greatest calamities. The things we acquire by long, steadfast, devoted effort are the things which last and bring into our lives great richness. Therefore, we must abandon as soon as we can this idea of haste and immediate results. The deep things do not come suddenly. Let us be patient, patient with ourselves. We may recognize many defects in our nature, but no matter how much blemish we may have within or how much disorder, it can all be removed. Go on working silently. If you do not succeed at once, put more energy and force into it. One who is willing to wait, the very attitude saves him and enables him to surmount insurmountable difficulties, while one who is impatient, he loses his opportunities. Therefore, silence and patience go together. Silence has a wonderful creative power. Make a study of the lives of great men. They conceive an idea, but they do not go out and shout it before the world. They think silently and work quietly until they realize their ideal. If we can form the habit of devoting a certain time to silent relaxation, it will have a very definite beneficial effect upon us, both our physical and moral being. When, in the course of our daily round of duties, we find ourselves growing physically tired or mentally tense, if we can take an attitude of relaxation and coordinate our thoughts, discarding all feelings of vexation and unrest, we shall feel restored and refreshed. It will even enable us to do our work better. How often people go to bed after their day's labor and do not rest? The next morning they wake up feeling very weary, without any sense of freshness or repose. What's the cause of it? There were They were not working at night. No, but they were worrying about their work. They took their work, all their worries and anxiety to bed with them. That is not the way to order our life. There is time for work, there is time for recreation and rest, and silence is the best rest giver. There is nothing which can rest us more quietly and quickly than the attitude of silence, and everyone has the right to it. When all is still, when our thoughts are quietened, and our entire nervous system is in order, when we have not against anyone and our mind is calm and poised, then in the inner depths of stillness we find something which is so ennobling and restful that others even feel it. Here, Maharaj is quoting a poem here. How sweet is the sound of silence, how tender is its touch, how fragrant is its breathing, how lovely is its form. Oh, be still, yet a while that my soul may see and feel, hear and touch its own in this realm of peace divine. There are dedicate things in our life, most potent and most vibrant, but we fail to perceive them because we lack in delicacy of feeling. When we are distracted by visible material glamour, we miss our mark. But in that hour of silence, coordination, when all our faculties are in perfect tune, we realize that we are part of that cosmic being. It is in this hour we find the fullness of our life. For then our little life has become untied with the great life. So it gets tied up, and our little mind with the cosmic mind. Only at such moments when the finite and infinite are so mingled does our mind stand apart in speechless silence and unspoken wonder. So let us also practice silence. Hope you have liked this reading. Do comment and tell us whether we are going to continue with this book. Hope you have enjoyed it, and I'm sure you will say that we are going to continue. So do comment and do share the videos with your friends and family. Thank you so much for being with us. Namaskar.